Terry Hughes is on the line from New York. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can indeed. It's a good line today, so it's good to talk to you. What's happening in the Big Apple? In fact, could you answer a question that was put to me by one of our listeners? Why is the Big Apple called the Big Apple?
There are a couple of versions of this. One was that when you came to New York to get up to Harlem, you caught the A train, as of the famous jazz song. So it became known amongst the blacks down south as take the A train up to Harlem, and it became the Big Apple.
Yes.
There's also another story that it was named after a bar in I think it was called the Amsterdam in Manhattan, coming from Dutch heritage. And it stayed on, and when the blacks moved in, they took it over and became the Big A. Let's go up to the Big A. They're two of the stories anyway.
Yes, and I've heard at least another one. It was speculated around this office that maybe it was coined by the mayor, John Lindsay, when he was mayor, that if you take a bite out of life in the Big Apple like you take a bite out of a Big Apple because it's such a lively city.
I doubt that one because it's been known as the Big Apple since the 20s, as far as I can trace it back.
Far before his time. And of course, the Big A at the moment is not the Big Apple at all, but it's AIDS, the AIDS syndrome, which is causing panic on the streets in certain parts of the world, certainly in your part of the world. What's the latest, Terry?
Well, you could, if you wanted to be facetious about such a serious subject, call it the Big AIDS, because New York is really the city most affected. I think we've had 284 deaths in this city in the last 2 years since the AIDS syndrome has been, recognized. I must point out that AIDS stands for Acquired Immunal... Now, you'll have to help me out on this one.
Deficiency...
Distress syndrome.
No, acquired immune deficiency syndrome.
Deficiency, right. We've become so used to just calling it by its nickname here that we've forgotten the real meaning. But the real meaning is that it destroys the body's immunal defenses, and when it's discovered, it's quite often too late because it's done its damage and all the other diseases have moved in, generally pleurisy or cancer. And that's one of the main problems. You can cure a cold by taking aspirin, even though you don't understand what the cold is. Nobody's yet understood what the common cold is. But to get to the roots of AIDS, you've got to understand what triggers off the initial immunal destruction. And that's what's blocking a lot of the scientists here, and it's worrying a lot of people.
Yes, it certainly has been given a great deal of coverage in this country, and a lot of people have accused the media of contributing to the panic that is in the community, certainly in the gay community, and a lot of leaders...
Argued here as well.
Yes, it's not helped...
Argued here as well. The people have hopped onto the bandwagon. There have been some infamous headlines. Rupert Murdoch's New York Post ran one last week, Granny dies of AIDS, and... there's one every other day. He realizes he's on a good thing and it sells newspapers. I wish people didn't treat it so hysterically, but it is, you just don't understand whatever is happening in these people's bodies, and I can see the panic that it does cause. In the medical profession, there are quite sane doctors who say they won't go anywhere near people who have this. People have thrown people off planes, refused them medical treatment. People have demanded in restaurants that effeminate-looking waiters be fired because they might be carrying AIDS. It's just becoming ridiculous, and I do hope that some sanity is found. I don't think the sanity will arrive until somebody really traces it to what the cause is.
Well, you'll be interested to know that the gay community here in Sydney has taken what is seen as a very responsible position on this in advising members of the gay community not to give blood and so forth, and it's good to see that such a responsible stand is being taken. How is the gay community in New York responding to this?
Very well. Some could argue that it's instilling a little prudency amongst the gay community, well known for sort of open sex and open sexual life, and a lot of people are becoming monogamous, which is unusual in the gay community, well, if you believe most of the stories. But what's interesting here is that the church groups have come out in aid of the gay communities. The Bishops' Conference here in New York last week held a meeting in one of the major cathedrals here and said, let's have some sanity about this, and they gave a whole list of how AIDS is transmitted, people think how it's transmitted, and appealed to the public in general not to treat people who have this disease as lepers, and especially not to treat homosexuals as lepers. It's been narrowed down to the homosexual community so far, but there are indications that it could be through other communities as well. Something like 90% of the people who have succumbed to it have been gay, but there's an indication that it could be afflicting other people as well.
So it's certainly a story which we'll continue to talk about, because it's obviously very much in people's minds this time.